Welcome back, guys. Today I'm going to show you what the perfect Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes roster looks like, the farming guide to get you there. I've wasted thousands of hours and years of my life perfecting the art of building rosters. I don't know why. I have no justification for doing so, but I did it. And today I'm going to show you what that all looks like. We're going to start with a high-level overview and some kind of ways for you to remember what everything is. From there, we're going to go into about the first year of farming to show you step-by-step process, how to go through things to be the most efficient you can be. Talk about the teams, the strategies, the synergies, all that sort of good stuff, and then offer up what you can do not only from year 1 and 2, but for year 3. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you in the video. All right, so I'd be willing to bet that the majority of Galaxy of Heroes players online at least know what the best roster looks like, simply because this has been the most powerful, best farming guide for years at this point. But I decided to put it into this little graphic to kind of hammer home what all the teams are, what they do, why they're important, just make it easy for everyone to remember. So at the top, we have the backbone teams. These are really our mid-game teams. These are the teams that, for free-to-play players at least, kind of help you punch up against those whales. Whales tend to just spend and just have all the Galactic Legends and no fluff, and that's a suboptimal way to build a roster, obviously, and the backbone teams help not only counter GLs, but they're the strongest non-Galactic Legend teams in the game. Below that, we have, of course, the core 8 teams. These are the first 8 teams that you should have in your roster. You can have other stuff. We'll talk about auxiliary teams in here in just a second, but these are the 8 most powerful, 8 obviously core teams in the game. Let's say you want to do some sort of weird, wacky other farming strategy. I would say at least promise me, it would really break my heart if you didn't start with the core 8 teams, because there's nothing even close to the viability of starting with the core 8. So, you can do what you want, but please just, there's one commandment, and it's core 8. And of course, we have the 2 arms being the 2 Galactic Legends. We're going to start out with JMK and JML. And then we talked about those auxiliary teams. I had Vader's lightsaber be kind of the auxiliary teams down here, Traya, Wampa, Qui-Gon, Savage. You'll notice this is a very Omicron heavy team, but auxiliary teams give you flexibility, like I said, because there's going to be a lot of teams on defense that have very specific counters, right? Very specific counters. And they're not strong enough to use, a backbone team per se. And, you probably want to use your core 8 teams elsewhere. And that's where the auxiliary teams come in. They're the Swiss Army knife. Like I said, their auxiliary teams are flexible. Galactic Legends are strong. Core 8 teams are stable. And, backbones just for bullying people who spend money at this point. And then, of course, the legs. You have to be able to stand on something. The legs are the 2 S-tier ships, the Executor and the Profundity. Profundity gives you the offense to destroy any fleet. The Executor gives you the defense to stop any fleet. So this is kind of the overview, first 2 years of the game. At this point, it's kind of the first 3 years of the game because we've added the Profundity here, but this is what the perfect 2.5, 3-year-old roster looks like. It's got everything you need. Now, obviously, if they added a new Galactic Legend tomorrow, or they added 700 new backbone teams in the next week, this could change, but as the game exists right now, this is the perfect, let's call it 3-year roster that exists. There isn't anything better. Now, like I said earlier, not everyone wants to have the perfect roster, and that's the great thing about this, especially with the graphic I like at least, is, think about it, he's kind of like a cyborg, right? His arms and legs aren't really real, so as long as you have that core fundamental 8 teams, if you want to pluck an arm out, give him 3 arms, you want to have 5 arms or whatever, I'm finally okay with you guys just, doing whatever it is that you want to do. Because at the end of the day, just remember, Vader's a cyborg. As long as he has his vital organs in that core 8 teams, you're going to be okay. You want to give him 700 lightsabers, just farm every single random team under the sun that's kind of useless, get as much auxiliary as possible. I've seen rosters where Vader is a General Grievous. I've seen rosters where Vader is just a walking torso. I've seen rosters where Vader just has legs, believe it or not. People just farm all the ships, Whatever your Vader is going to look like, I hope you enjoy it. But I'm going to show you kind of like what the first year should look like at least, so that you can at least have those vital organs. You can have that torso. You can have those core 8 teams. And from there, however many arms or legs you want to give your Darth Vader, I hope you give him as many or as little as you desire. Let's talk about farming. Really quickly, since this channel doesn't have any sponsors, the best way that I've been able to support myself is through your guys' kind donations through Patreon. So if you guys want to just support the channel for a couple bucks a month, or you want help with GAC or roster reviews, or just want to hang out in the Patreon exclusive Discord server we just started out, get access to all the exclusive content we're going to start making, that's the best way that you guys can support me. I know it's only a couple of bucks for you guys, but it really adds up and kind of helps me, helps my family kind of, take care of some bills, make it more practical to do this part-time YouTube thing, which I enjoy very much, but especially with everything going on, is sometimes difficult to find the time for. So if you guys find any of this helpful, or you just want to help support, it's a great way to do it. All right, so again, this is all pretty standard, but we're going to go over it because there's always new players joining the game who kind of haven't heard the spiel before. I broke this down into 10 phases to make it kind of easy to remember and kind of check your progress. And we'll talk about in each phase which characters are more important or less important. But just kind of keep in mind that this is a general flowing overview of how that first year is going to go. And obviously, you know, some things are going to go faster, some things are going to go slower. It kind of changes for everyone and what they decide to do. But we're talking about non-negotiables, having that core 8 team. The non-negotiable of the non-negotiable is Vader being your first Zeta with his Merciless Massacre Zeta, but also your first Relic. Vader is the best character in the entire game for free-to-play players. He's the most valuable character in the entire game for free-to-play players, right? Non-negotiable, first Zeta Vader, first Relic Vader. Anything after that, I will at least visit you for family gatherings. I might not talk to you, but I'll at least look at you. Let's talk about Phase 1. Now, Phase 1 is pretty simple. Phase 1 is about building up teams that you can use early, but also characters that you have access to early. Because let's be honest, if I want you to start farming a character that you can't unlock until level 85 and you're level 26, that's not really going to be possible. So the first characters that we're going to farm are going to follow a very important theme of being requirements to unlock more powerful characters, be used on good teams, and all around being useful for that very, very, very early game. We're talking about Old Ben Kenobi, Farm Boy Luke out of the Cantina, Ahsoka Tano, Jedi Anakin for Jedi, and then of course Dark Trooper, because we'll talk about later, we need some Empire, we're going to build some auxiliary a little early, it's going to be fantastic. What we're doing here is we're preparing a good Padme team, because that's going to be a very strong team for us, not only in Galactic War, but you know, likely in GAC as an early defensive team, doing some events, yada, yada, yada. It's a fantastic team. Does it taper off in the end game? Yes. But you just started. You don't have to worry about what the game looks like 3 to 4 years from now. Padme and some CLS farming requirements. Good. Dark Trooper, of course, for Empire. We have Newt Gunray down here. Newt Gunray is a pretty early farm that we can do. Newt Gunray is going to help us unlock Padme. Django, of course, is going to carry it. We'll talk about that later. But just know that we should start accumulating a couple of Newt Gunray shards here and there if we can. And then Moff Gideon, of course, is another Empire character. He's good with Dark Trooper on that Imperial Trooper team. He's easily accessed early because it's a pretty early node. He's going to help us get our Emperor Palpatine. Moving on to Phase 2 and Phase 3. Phase 2 is more of the same. We're getting 2 more Jedi. That's 4 total Jedi that we have to unlock Grandmaster Yoda, who's going to be a very, very important character for us, along with Bastila Shan and Jolie Bindo for our early Galactic War, because we like to forget it sometimes, but for early players, Galactic War can be a pain in the butt, and this is going to help you make sure that you can full clear Galactic War every time. The second you have Bastila Shan and you apply her leadership, Galactic War is done forever, right? We have Veers, we have Piet, Boba Fett. Boba Fett's going to kind of become obsolete around the late early game, you know, mid-game area. But he is going to be helpful to unlock our Chewbacca, so we are going to get him. And he's really easy farm because you use him in, you know, he's a shipment character, so you don't really have to sacrifice anything to get him. But Piet and Veers going with our Dark Trooper and our Moff Gideon is not only 4 Empire characters towards EP, but also 4 of the most important Imperial Trooper characters, which are good for Galactic War, good for GAC once we hit level 85. You know, some events here and there. But they're one of the great auxiliary teams. That's why we farm them early, because little to no investment, decent output. Next, we have Qui-Gon Jinn, who just so happens to be a 5th Jedi, easy to farm, and another auxiliary team, just like our Imperial Troopers. Princess Leia, Stormtrooper Han are 2 more characters that we're going to need to unlock CLS outside of R2-D2. And then Grandmaster Yoda, since we have 5 Jedi, we can now unlock Grandmaster Yoda. We have Zam kind of sneaking in there. She's got a top 3, top 4 Omicron. She helps make that bounty hunter team go from, you know, being okay to really being that core team that you're absolutely going to need in the early and mid game. Fantastic character. Is she required for the Chewbacca unlock? No, but she's a pretty easy character to farm, and she doesn't really take away from too much else, so we're going to kind of slot her in there to be another bounty hunter character. We get into Phase 4. Here we have Django. Here we have the good late game farms that you can't open until the 80s, 70s, 80s, stuff like that. Django, along with that new Gunray, of course, is going to help us solo that Padme event, so we don't have to invest in Geonosians. Geonosian Brood Alpha, we do want to make sure we get at least unlocked at 4 stars. The Geonosians are a fantastic example of a team that we refer to as STD teams, sometimes difficult. Teams that are not good, but if your opponent is bad, they can be a pain in the butt. And I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys, if you're new, a lot of your opponents are really bad, right? So it doesn't take too much to get them to 4 stars. I wouldn't invest past Gear 7, Gear 8 on this team. As you see here, he's Gear 10, maybe, and I'm 6 million GP, and I haven't had a problem with that ever since. So not a team that you invest a ton into, absolutely, but, you know, an STD team, and STD teams are definitely helpful to have. Excuse me. Boss, of course, is going to be the early game leadership for a bounty hunter team, along with plugging in Grief and Mando. Once we talk about Aura Singh in a little bit being plugged in there as the new leadership, that's how you transition out of that early game bounty hunter team with Bosk lead into that mid game team with Aura Singh lead. But for now, fantastic offensive team. If we talk about our 3 core offensive teams at this point as of Phase 4, let's finish Phase 4 really quickly. Unlock EP because we have all our Rebels. Now that we have all our Empire, we unlock R2-D2. Once we have our R2-D2, we unlock CLS, Han Solo from Raids, Padme unlocked with Django. Here's what we have at Phase 4. We have our 3 offensive teams, possibly 4 for cleanups if we need them. We have CLS, which is an undersized recovery max banner team. Most efficient team on offense are the recovery max banner teams. Undersized max banner teams, sorry. CLS is one of them. Darth Vader Solo is one of them. Bosk-led Bounty Hunters is one of them. And the Imperial Troopers is one of them. All of these teams finish with not taking in 5 characters, so we get extra banners on top. Plus, they win so quickly or recover enough to where we have max banners. So you're getting perfect, better than perfect banners. And realistically, at the end of the day, you can't control what your opponent does, but if you can make sure that you have the most possible banners, you're going to put yourself in the best position to win, and that's why those are the 3 and now 4 with the Imperial Troopers best early game offensive teams. We also have an STD team on defense with the Geonosian Brood Alpha, and I'm actually officially today classifying Padme as an STD team because is Padme hard to beat? No, but in the early game, Padme, especially with a strong Anakin and a little bit of survivability, and we'll talk about Mace Windu here in a second, I'm officially declaring Padme as an STD team. Kind of a fun little addition there. I actually hadn't thought of that until right now, but I think she definitely fits the criteria along with Geonosians as STD. We're going to move on to Phase 5 and Phase 6. Phase 5, we have enough bounty hunters. We're getting Chewbacca. Now that we have that CLS team, Han Solo from Raids and Chewbacca from bounty hunters, put a couple of stars, probably 2 or 3 stars into 3PO and Chewie, get him to Gear 7. Just by being there, he's helpful. Next, we have the next 2 raid characters in GK and Shreya, along with Han Solo. These are the 3 raid characters. Now, the raids will change soon, and we do not currently know if you're still going to be able to get the raid characters as quickly as you have in the past. But they've said that, so we're gonna take Capital Games at its word. And if you guys are new to this game, never trust Capital Games or take them at their word, because sometimes they lie and sometimes they're just incompetent enough to where it's kind of like they're lying at the end of the day. But these characters, for the 7 years that this game has been out and all the many years that they've been in the game, have been relatively easy to acquire. They're raid characters. They're important. Of course, Kenobi is a great character for Padme early and, requirement later. And then Shreya, of course, is an auxiliary team. And Aura Singh, of course, is that leadership that transitions your bounty hunters from that early game to that mid game. All right, so moving on to Phase 6. Phase 6 is all about doing the requirements to unlock Darth Revan. A lot of people go Jedi Knight Revan first or Darth Revan first. It doesn't really matter. I have always been a huge proponent of Darth Revan first because Jedi Knight Revan is good on offense. He's another, undersized max banner team. But at the end of the day, Darth Revan in the early game is just a stalwart on defense and therefore infinitely more valuable. So if you want to go Jedi Knight Revan first or Darth Revan first, I don't really care. I have Darth Revan slotted in here with his requirements in Phase 6. And of course, Scion, Nihilus, Sith Empire Trooper are out here. I'm actually going to make an audible. I don't know if I've done this yet. We're going to make an audible and add in SWGOH here. Let me just quickly find my Sith characters down here. There's a little audible. I'm going to add in SWGOH. He is a part of that team in that triumvirate. I would actually argue that with the Savage Omicron and the Traya Omicron, especially with how it's been performing in Kyber 1, Savage and Traya Omicrons, just like Aura Singh transitions the bounty hunters out of the early game into a mid-game team, I think Savage and Traya Omicrons transform that triumvirate Sith team out of that auxiliary role and into that backbone role. I don't think anyone would argue with me there. It's such a dominant team right now. So definitely a character worth, at least at low gear, considering a top 5 Omicron for. Phase 7, of course, is the mirror. It's the requirements to unlock Darth Revan, or Jedi Knight Revan, rather. Once we have both Revans, we unlock Malak. Now, be very careful here. Very careful. When you unlock Malak, if you plan on finishing the core 8 and being a good little boy and making sure your torso, like we talked about, is all set up before you add as many arms or legs or lightsabers or whatever to your Darth Vader, leave him at 5 stars. And the reason is he requires Guild Event Token 1, get 1 currency. The same as Gas. Gas is way better. So if you plan on immediately filling out the other 2 core 8 teams, we've done 6 so far: Jedi Knight Revan, Darth Revan, Padme, CLS, Vader. Why am I... This is embarrassing. Darth Vader, CLS, Jedi Knight Revan, Darth Revan, Padme, Bounty Hunters, General Grievous, and Gas. So if you plan on finishing the rest of your core 8 teams, I would save the get 1 currency for Gas. If you plan on doing something else, you can 7-star him. It's totally fine. Moving on to Phase 8, Ewoks for C-3PO. C-3PO plugs into that CLS team, and of course is the last requirement we need with Shaak Ti to set up our Gas preparation. Not going to edit that out, by the way. Shaak Ti Clones is a fantastic auxiliary team with some Asajj and some droids. Helps us put together a General Grievous team, unlock our Gas, Wat Tambor from Darkside Geonosis TV, and boom, we have our core 8 teams. Go add arms and legs to your own desire. Now, at this point, go do whatever it is that you want to do. Obviously, if we're chasing perfection, the best first galactic legend is Kenobi. So here in Phase 10, we have the rest of the Kenobi requirements that we haven't touched. Ayla Secura, Mace Windu, Bo-Katan, Cody, Sergeant, Cad Bane, Magna Guard. After that, the next best thing to do is go after the Executor. So we have some more Executor requirements, some requirements to unlock Bam himself. We have our Executor. Now here, the Phoenix finally make an appearance, and that's simply just because there's too much value in Interceptor and Defender right now. Some can argue Tarkin lead. I think if you're low level, and you obviously don't have Grand Inquisitor Scythe because you're not an 8 million, 9 million GP player, I prefer Thrawn. Some can argue Tarkin. I'm not going to make that argument. I'm just going to say Thrawn. So we do at least need to unlock him. Of course, we have Iden, Mara Jade, Death Trooper. These two by themselves, even at low stars for Iden and probably gear 12 for Death Trooper, you're going to full auto your Mon Mothma teams. Very good team. Place it on defense if you want. I generally save it to full auto like those Relic 7 Mon Mothma teams for perfect banners with my other gear 6, gear 7 Imperial Troopers, and that's never really been a problem for me. Mara Jade plugs into a Empire lineup that's going to be important. We have some other auxiliary characters like Wampa, who just so happens to also be a requirement for Jedi Knight Luke, plus some other requirements, and we have Jedi Master Luke. Now, at this point, we have 2 arms, a core, a lightsaber, and 1 leg. The next best thing that I haven't, physically put into the squad tab is going to be the requirements for the Profundity. So to save time, I'm just going to pull them up right now. Down here, the requirements that we wouldn't have would be stuff like Admiral Raddus, the other Rogue One characters, Biston we talked about. Dash Rendar is going to be important at this point, and we just kind of power through the rest of them. At that point, we have 2 arms, 2 legs, a lightsaber, a core, and we can start putting some backbone teams together. Now, we talked about some of our auxiliary teams as we upgrade them, transition into backbone teams, but at this point, the door is kind of wide open, right? Do you want to farm a 3rd Galactic Legend? If you do, it's going to be Jabba. Currently, it's going to be Jabba. I would recommend, and something that I've done and found amazing success with, is instead go for some backbone teams. Here's a great time to farm Starkiller. You can get a Malgus team up and running. You can get a Maul team up and running. You can even farm Dr. Aphra, who I have been absolutely adoring. I've been kicking ass against Jabbas with, Aphra, and it's been great. No Datacrons required, even though the Datacron is amazing. It's been fantastic. So I would recommend a couple of backbone teams like we talked about into Jabba. You can go Jabba into backbone. You can add another leg. You can add another arm. You can give them 700 lightsabers and farm, Jawas or whatever. At this point, the agency is on you. You can do whatever it is. I've given you an outline. I've given you an overview. I've given you the knowledge of what's good and what's not good so that you can just figure it out. You know, after a couple months of playing this game, you're going to discover your style, your passions, the things you hate, the stuff you love, and I trust you to do what it is that's in your best interest, right? You have fun at the game. You click on my videos, I get my 0.001, point hundredth of a penny, I think. I get 100th of a penny every time you watch this video. So thank you for clicking here. And we're all happy. So as always, I love you, and I'll see you later.